The illustrious Jabba bids you welcome. I'm going to regret this.
I'm Pete Mitchell. He's Peyton Jones. And this is the Church Planter Podcast, brought to you by Church Planter Magazine. Hey, Church Planter, this is Pete Mitchell.
And this Peyton Jones.
And we're only starting our podcast 7 minutes late. That's like a new record for us.
Yeah, but it doesn't affect you guys. Don't worry.
Yeah, you'll still want to turn us off in about 5 more minutes.
That long, Pete? We must be getting better.
Well, it's not that we're getting better. It's just that we've become a math pastor. Oh, I was going to try and roll right into the commercial, but...
That's awesome. Hey, Pete, I got to say, it frustrates me to no end that I am not a math pastor.
Really? What have you been doing to help yourself out with all of that payroll, accounting, insurance, website, all the administrative stuff?
Well, Pete, I actually went into ministry so that I could do all kinds of tax documents and compliance and, accounting. I really thought that would change the world if I could just do those things for Jesus at a church. But I realize since that I'm really only gifted at preaching and counseling and evangelism.
Mamma mia, that's a spicy meatball.
So I decided, Pete, that what I should do is maybe give those things over to somebody else who's, really good at them. And that's their calling in life. And I found, Pete, an organization that'll help me do that.
What's it called?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Pete. It's so simple. It's Simplify Church. SimplifyChurch.com. They actually help me simplify what I do so I could focus on the things that I'm called to.
Say my name.
SimplifyChurch.com.
Come on, best Simplify Church commercial ever.
It really was. And it was probably our cheesiest one ever. We just make this crud up as we go, right?
Hey,
they're never the same.
I know this actually has nothing to do with the commercial, but it's a good segue back into Smack Talk. So I bought the Chewbacca underwear.
Yeah.
That you found on.
I was going to say, for the 3rd, 4th week running, let's talk about your underwear.
Well, I bought it that you pointed out to me on Amazon. And the whole day I kept going up to Jamie going, she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm Chewbacca.
Were you like pulling your pants down or were you just walking around in your underwear all day?
I don't think we should get into that.
I just picture you turning your backside to Jamie, dropping your drawers, bending over and going. Exactly. That's what I meant.
Oh my gosh. We have to get all of our smack talk out now because this podcast is about to get serious. It's about to go off.
It's about to get all kinds of non-PC.
You and I have got some really stupid friends on Facebook.
Oh my gosh, dude. I can't. Okay. So let's just jump into it, shall we?
I meant to kind of whet their appetite. I didn't mean to get you started on it already.
Oh man. It's so funny because I don't post political things because I just think everybody's stupid to begin with. Kind of like that meme. I was talking with Pete earlier in the week about this meme where it goes, can people really be that stupid? The answer is always yes.
Here's the thing when it comes to all the politics and stuff. The only thing I really post on Facebook is that I can't stand either candidate. Yeah. And I get harassed nonstop because I don't support Trump. It's like amazing. And then yesterday I read a post by Coleman Luck. He was on one of our podcasts. I can't remember if it was Church Planter or Hardcore. If it was back in the day. I think it might have been one of the first Hardcore episodes. And he wrote a really great piece yesterday on his Facebook post. He goes, I equally, for lack of a better term, slam Hillary and Trump. because I think they're both just vile. And I mean, he's a Hollywood writer, right? So he can really make these things very descriptive. But he's a hardcore Christian. I mean, went to Moody, he very involved in his church. I mean, he is a hardcore Christian. And he goes, but I got to be honest with you. Whenever I say stuff about Clinton, all of my non-Christian friends who are liberal or progressive, as he calls them, he goes, they don't harass me. He goes, but when I say something negative about Trump, all these Christians come out of the woodwork and just go off on me. And
because it's almost in a weird way, and we know this, we've talked about this before. There's this marriage between Christians and the Republican right wing that makes no sense, because neither party is really speaking for Christianity. And I know people always default to abortion, but here's the deal, guys. No president has had the backbone to do anything significant on the abortion issue since Roe v. Wade. And that's just a fact. Nothing significant has been done to reverse that decision by any candidate, regardless of what promises they make during election time.
And that's when we've had a conservatively appointed Supreme Court, a Republican Congress, and a Republican president. We've had the trifecta, and nothing has happened to abortion. So don't give me this whole, well, if we get the Republican in there, it's going to stop abortion. Baloney.
Yeah. And that's a problem when politics is really less about doing the right thing, including Bush. Bush didn't change it. They didn't overturn it. Republican Congress, Republican president, they didn't do it. And here's the deal is I think that somehow people are equating Christianity with republicanism. And I just simply do not, because there are other issues. Both parties have issues that I believe in. And what would be interesting is to sit down one day, if you're in turmoil over this, or you're hearing what we're saying and going, man, you guys are kind of jerks. Sit down and make up a political party that would truly reflect the kingdom of God. Write it down. And I think you'll be surprised when you take New Testament principles and make a party off of them, that you realize why Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this earth, because it does not work, right? And so what you're left with, and by the way, I am not going to vote. I mean, if there's a third party there, I'm all in, because I, at this point, am not happy voting for either one of them. I am definitely not a Democrat, and I am no longer a Republican. But here's the deal. Neither one represents me. And guys, here's where the even going into that is sidetracking. But here was what I put up here. And this is the picture. It says, and I'm gonna read it straight off here, and then I'm gonna read a couple of the comments off of my Facebook post. And the reason why I'm gonna do this is because on issues of social justice, the church should lead the way. I don't have hope for a lot of large established churches, because the money rolls in from the constituency that Pete and I were just talking about. I know of universities that are theologically liberal. Every single professor at the university, I know this firsthand experience, that some of them are theologically liberal, which I'm a theological conservative. But because the money comes from evangelical supporters, the university president will always default to an evangelical position so he can keep getting the money, yet hire liberal professors. This is the game that's played. So from our big church pulpits, we hear the party line toed. And even if it makes Christianity a mockery of what it really is, rather than being a radical kingdom underground movement that challenges groupthink, that actually turns kingdoms upside down and subverts them, we become this big, just inverted religion. We can criticize in church history, what the church has done in the past, but we repeat the same mistakes every time we marry ourselves to politics. And so the reason I'm bringing this up today is so many times the church throughout history, including the civil rights movement, was on the wrong side. And when I say the church, I don't mean the black church. I mean the white church. For the longest time, was on the...
That's what we call a conductor who hates you.
It was on the wrong side of social justice issues, and I believe we are today. So, for example, my opinion is that the church ought to be, and church plans ought to be, leading social change, social justice, just like it did in the civil rights movement. If you want to go back in a time machine and say, over the past 100 years, what was the best example of the kingdom of God coming on earth? What was the best way where it filtered into everyday society? And I would say through the black church in the 1960s, Martin Luther King Jr., peaceful protesting, rising up together, preaching forgiveness and love in the face of their enemies, asking their enemies to pray for them, literally standing face to face with white sheriffs and saying, "Can I pray for you? Will you pray for me?" I've got a recording of a conversation like that, and the white sheriff is clearly claiming to be a Christian, an evangelical Christian. He's saying, "I will not pray for you, boy. You go into your church and you pray to your God, but I bet your prayers don't even get over your head." And those kinds of statements and that kind of attitude was normal in the church. Today, I don't think we are equated with social change. I don't think people look at our stances on social issues like this, justice issues, and think the church. Now, there's a radical bunch of people that you don't want to mess with when it comes to social justice. Instead, the world, and as you mentioned, our liberal friends, people maybe on the other side of the political spectrum from the mainstream Christianity, they get it. And they're like, hey, this is wrong and someone needs to make a stand. But we politicize over our political parties rather than saying, what would Jesus be for? Would he be for protecting injustices because it's the establishment? Or would Jesus be for allowing the kingdom of God to filter through like it did in the civil rights movement? And that's the question that I think we need to ask today.
So, what else happened to you this last week? No, I'm just kidding.
So here's the meme. And it's, I don't think police should murder unarmed black men. And that is somehow a controversial opinion.
And I was blown away by both your, now you've got more friends than me on Facebook. I'm only like at 600 or 700 friends. You got like 1,500, 2,000. I don't know what it is.
I don't know what it is.
But neither one of us have maxed out our friends. I don't actually accept everyone's friend request when they give it to me, because half the time I don't know who they are. I'm like, I don't know who you are. Why am I friending you? Unless I see they're a church planner or whatever, then I'm like, okay, maybe they listen to the show. Maybe they're the one listening to the show. And I was surprised.
Not after today, Pete.
Yeah, no kidding, right? I was really surprised at how many white people were. Okay, we're talking about, clearly what brought this up is the latest cop shooting of an unarmed black man with his hands so far above his head, they could not get any higher. It's not possible to put them any higher. And he's shot and killed.
Yeah.
And it's like, are you out of your mind? How are you going to justify this? How can you possibly justify this cop killing that man? And yet people are still finding a way. And I was like astonished that it was happening. And it was happening a lot on your feed. And then I actually had a guy pop up on mine, and I thought he was someone I knew from years ago. I actually thought he was a Mormon. I don't believe it was the guy who I thought it was. So I'm actually not even sure who the guy is and how he made it onto my feed. And so, he just went off about how, it's not controversial, and, more people have been shot for being non-compliant, and just like all kinds of nonsense. And so because I was like, okay, I don't think this is the dude that I thought it was, I'm not going to antagonize this, right? Because I want to have an opportunity to talk to someone, right? I want to develop a relationship, and who knows what'll happen on down the line, but I'm not looking to like pick fights and drive people away from God, right? That's not my point.
Right.
But when we've got dumb arguments from Christians, I am going to pick a fight with them, because you're telling me you're a Christian. I'd rather take it offline, or I'd rather take it into a private chat. But
yeah,
it's like, look, you claim to say one thing, and then you're saying something that's just absurd. And I was actually astounded. I was astounded after what happened this last week, that people are still like, oh no, it's still the black guy's fault.
Yeah, and that's what happens when it comes to this whole thing. Like, let me just read this comment again. I don't think police should murder an unarmed black man, and that is somehow a controversial opinion. It's just everyone should agree. I don't think police should murder unarmed black men either. Like, what's so hard about saying? I heard everything yesterday from what's the term murder people have a problem with to, it's black on black killings that are worse.
I saw one guy going, well, was it premeditated? Like, that has anything to do with it? Like, if it's premeditated or not?
Premeditation means first-degree murder. There is second-degree, third-degree.
We're talking.
It's still murder.
They're going after the legal terms. Screw the legal terms.
Absolutely.
Dude's dead. I don't care what the legal term is. Dude is dead.
So then what happens is this is how you boil down a lot of what people are saying. It comes down to this. Oh, those stupid black people. There they are. They're just mad again. Those stupid blacks. And what's a problem is that this response from the white community is what is hurtful to the black community. So, and I made a statement at one point. I said, look, because I don't debate online. Like you said, somebody took personal offense, and I said, hey, call me tomorrow and we'll talk about it. Because I don't troll. I'll answer reasonable objections and things like that, but I'll never on Facebook go into, kind of like Paul says, have nothing to do with a foolish and stupid argument. But here's the deal. This is what's concerning me. If the majority of Christians I know, rather than just simply saying this is a justice issue, that man should not have been shot, or I mean, maybe people don't like the fact I said that I don't think police should murder unarmed black men. Maybe I'm supposed to say everybody starts arguing. Why not just hear the pain that the black community's in, your fellow brothers and sisters that are oppressed often and are treated differently often, whether you want to accept that fact or not, and I have been in the inner city. I have baptized people that have been shot to death in the back 6 times. I have witnessed this. I have watched people in my church be treated differently for the color of their skin. I have seen all of these things. I have children of mixed race. I have people within my family, my extended family, that are black. And I have long, extensive discussions with them, black Christians that are balanced. And these are issues. What concerns me more is not even that there's a lack of sympathy, but an almost violent opposition to statements made from the black community that this could even possibly be an injustice when it was clearly an injustice. If that is how we are representing Christianity to people, then we need to be careful. We need to be really, really, really careful. If you ever read the book of Isaiah, God, when he mentions to them their crimes, one of the biggest lists of crimes that he mentions to them, besides idolatry, is the oppression of the poor and the underprivileged. And God goes into this big litany of offenses that were committed by Israel against those that were on the lower economic side of things. Now, the statistic is that the average white person, the average black person, that the average white person's net worth is 69 times in America that of the average African American. Well, immediately people are going to say, well, why is that? Right? And basically it boils down to this. It's their own fault. they can't get over the past, or boom, boom, boom. Look, if you're born into these neighborhoods, if you're born into some of the places where I've planted churches, you have no idea until you've actually gone into them and been a part of them and spoken with people and understood their heart, their attitude. They don't sit around going, hey, don't trust Whitey, fight the power. These are people that have a lot of love in their heart, but have a lot of obstacles to overcome. Sorry, I'm ranting. No, I said this was going to be a conversation.
Yeah, no, here's the thing though, man. I think this was honestly the opinion I got this last week after seeing the absolute absurdity of people trying to justify this. And okay, you could say we don't know all the facts. We don't know what was said. Well, frankly, we're never going to know because we're always going to have her opinion. There wasn't a recording of what she said to him or what he said to her, if there was anything, right? We don't know. But we can see from the helicopter, right? You remember the helicopter pilot? He's like, oh yeah, that looks like one bad dude. Seriously, how can you tell that from freaking up in the air looking at a dude with his hands up? That was literally, he's black. That looks like one big black dude is what he should have said. Because that's what he was thinking. Oh, one big bad dude, one big black dude. The same thing to him, clearly. And I mean, I'm looking at this going, okay, why is everyone still trying to defend this? And this is all I could come up with. Because it has finally reached the point where it's like everything that we thought that cops aren't really like this, that if you get shot by a cop, you deserve it. Mm-hmm. Is finally being exposed as, no, wait a second. It is different for black people. They are being treated different. And it's like, but wait a second. No, I got to defend my position that, you know, if you just live right, because if I live right, I'm okay. I don't get in trouble with the cops.
That's it. It disturbs our own security and feeling of safety. And let me tell you something, people do not like when they're feeling safe and things are neatly ordered in their own little boxes. People don't like to even say, hold on, maybe the system that we're in is not okay. Remember how you heard about, remember the Matrix? He makes that point in the Matrix that he says most people don't want to be woken up.
That's true. Yeah.
Because, you know, hey, I got my life, kind of like Radiohead saying years ago, no alarms and no surprises. You know, don't alarm me. Don't wake me up. Don't disturb my slumber. But here's the idea is, you know, one of the underlying issues of this whole thing is that on the part of the police, the underlying fears, stereotypes, and assumptions made by police officers who approach situations like these cause it to lead to a different outcome. So this would be the argument of the Black Lives Matter movement, is that when a police officer approaches a black man, like what you said about what the helicopter pilot from hundreds of feet away from his video cam, you're looking, oh, that looks like a bad dude. You mean he's black? That's the only thing you could see. He's big and he's black, and
he's got his hands up. Like, he could also see he had his hands up.
He had his hands up. And he was moving slow. He had his back turned to the officers, on and on. And here's the deal is that outcome is different for a black person than it is for a white person. She shot out of fear. She was afraid because he was black. There are stereotypes. There are assumptions, all those things that in a way are kind of like a premeditation. This is why the Black Lives Matter movement is saying we're being treated differently. And guys, even if you don't believe that, I do believe that, because let me tell you right now, if you're going to pull me over today and say, hey, Peyton, you get a choice. You can either be a black person pulled over today or a white person. I'm going to tell you, I want to be a white person,
dude,
being pulled over.
Yeah.
Straight up.
Absolutely.
Don't put, that's a really easy choice for me. But if I'm pulled over today, not only is that super important to me, but I lost my train of thought.
About being a white guy getting pulled over by the cops as opposed to being a black guy pulled over by the cops?
I don't remember what I was leading into. That was kind of an aside. I lost my major point.
But I will say this. It is different in different parts of the country. There's no doubt about that in my mind. I shared on one of our last podcasts, my best friend from college, he was the groomsman at my wedding. He's a black man, really, really black, like dark black. He's got 2 brothers. He's got a sister. Obviously the whole entire family's black, grew up without a dad. And I asked him about the whole racism thing and what has he experienced. And he's like, I'll be honest with you, I haven't experienced much of it. And he was like, but I think that's because of where we live. We live in California. It's a little bit different out here. It's definitely different out here than it is, which is not to say that there's no racism out here, right? It's not to say that. He just hasn't experienced much of it. But at the same time, and I told you this, I go, there are certain parts of the country I would not want to be your daughters. I would not want to be your daughters with the dark skin, being part black, and going on the freeway. I mean, some of the things that happen, it's astounding to me. It's absolutely astounding. And I think a lot of people still have this mindset that, government is good. Our leaders are wholesome. They're moral. They are there for our best intent. And man, my eyes have been exposed to this over the last few years that it is not that way. One of my buddies, I haven't even told you this, I don't think. One of my really, really good buddies, I just talked to him this week. He's going to go to jail for 2 to 5 years for a crime he did not commit because he was forced to plead. He was forced to plead. If he didn't plead, he probably would have gotten 12 years, even though they had no evidence. And they even said, we got no evidence, but we got unlimited resources. We're the government. We're going to fly in people from all over the country. They're going to make all the jury cry, and you are going to jail. And he was like, well, how do I tell my 11-year-old? And I remember, because I read every document that happened with this whole thing. It's been going on for years. It's a long story, guys. We won't get into it. But I remember going, wow, they don't have to tell the truth. Like, the prosecution doesn't have to tell the truth. It's only they have to prove it in a court of law, but they can claim whatever they want. Yeah. And my mind was just like, okay, the government is there to win. They've got people who want to get a promotion, who want to go to the next level in their job, whatever it is, and they will say what they need to say, do what they need to do to get that promotion, even if it means you going to jail, or in this case, you getting shot. And it's like, okay, so that started me down the path of going, okay, this is just, there's some things going on here that just are not right. And my buddy's white. I mean, he's as white as they come. But that kind of got me started looking at all this going, okay, if I can see the government doing that to this guy, and you're looking at what's happening with some of these black folks, oh my gosh, dude. I mean, where do you go when, okay, as a white guy, if I get into trouble, I call the cops. Where do you go if, like, you're afraid to call the cops because they might shoot you, right? Last year, I think it was last year, maybe it was earlier this year, there was a dude, there was on video, he's laying on the ground, right, as a black man with his hands up, and he gets shot because he's trying to keep the cops from shooting the kid who had autism. I mean, what is going on with these people? I'm sorry, I went off.
No, it's great.
I'll shut up.
It makes me feel good that I'm not the only one going off all the time. So, getting back to this, like, I've heard everything on my post from, you didn't mention women as a black men. Here's a video that says that, I'm going to throw out some facts that say how bad black people are, that they kill each other all the time, the 13% of the population, 50% of the homicides are committed, which, by the way, is not true. That's a made up statistic. But all of the deals, like, so 23% of the people shot by police are black men. So I get all these videos thrown at me. It still doesn't address my meme, which is, I don't think police should murder unarmed black men. And that is somehow a controversial opinion. The fact that white people are throwing up all these other arguments just drives a further divide in our country. These are black leaders, and the black leaders in the church are saying to the white leaders, why won't you speak up for us? Why do we have to raise these things ourselves? The average deal is because the average white person is thinking, you guys are you're creating this racism. You're making it an issue. It's not an issue. That's what they're hearing us say. I'm not saying that you guys out there are saying that. I'm saying that's what they're hearing. They're hearing a lack of support. I've had black friends online saying, where are the white leaders at? I'm hurting right now. Why are you guys not speaking up and speaking into this? Because I'll tell you what, if I put something that's funny on my webpage, if I put something about my family on the website, in fact, the post right after is about my daughter who's in the hospital. I got 1 million people commenting and liking. But man, I tell you, my meme on the black men, unarmed black men, I don't think police should shoot unarmed black men. Take anything else out of that. Black men, murder, shoot, or whatever. There should be no issue with that statement. Unless, guys, there is an underlying issue in this country. This meme highlights the fact there is an underlying issue. If you can't simply agree with that statement, there is an underlying issue in America. And to me, I almost didn't post it because I was ready for the backlash from the white community, right? But I posted it. I made the final decision. I'm posting it to show support for the leaders of the black community. As a Christian white leader, to say, we will stand with you. And guys, that's what they need. That's what the black community is asking for from white leadership. Please stand with us. Just show unity as the body of Christ with us, because we're in these communities. We are trying to put the pieces back together. We are trying to get our people to respond in a godly way. But we know from the civil rights movement, until the March to Selma was televised, white America had the same responses. Why don't those blacks just stop being so uppity? Why are those blacks always so angry? We treat them pretty well. That's what was happening. The same exact, you could rewind the tape. The same responses are being given today by my white friends as they were in the 60s. You can watch man on the street interviews from white America back in the civil rights and hear the exact same things. If they would just stop killing each other, maybe, they wouldn't be living in ghettos. All of the same crap that people are saying. Martin Luther King Jr., the black church in America, they embraced the gospel and it led to social change, right? That's what we need to do today. Guys, I'm asking you to maybe follow in the footsteps of Jesus and Paul and Peter, who racial reconciliation was a big deal. Jesus, when he tells that parable, the Good Samaritan, it is to confront, amongst other things, racism. What Jesus does is he has all the religious people walking away like they don't care. That's what's happening in America. Religious leaders are passing by these situations on the road. Somebody has been wrongfully mugged and robbed and killed and left for dead on a road. In this case, it was shot by police. And religious leaders are walking past. I don't want to get involved with that. Jesus says, then a good Samaritan, by the way, that would be like saying in this situation, think of like in today, you'd say like a Muslim, right? A member of the Taliban came by. And so Jesus was trying to get people to look at them as people, stop seeing race as the key thing. And what we're doing right now is we're making, by opposing these statements by Black Lives Matter, we are making race the main issue. And that's what's hurting the black community further. What Jesus did in telling that, by putting a shocker in there that the good guy was a Samaritan, was he saying, see them as people. Stand with your brothers and sisters right now. The first thing to happen in the Jerusalem church was there were race issues, right? Right away, the Hellenists and the Jews, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, that there was a fight broke out. Then, just a podcast a few weeks ago, we talked about, multi-ethnic congregations and not planting just ethnically centered congregations as a long-term, means of integrating the church, creating if you start with an ethnocentric church rather than a multi-ethnic church plant, that's only a short-term solution. It's not going to be a long-term solution.
We need to get Derwin Gray back on, because I really want to hear what they're doing in their church right now with all this going on, because they've got a very culturally diverse church and family. I mean, he's married to a white woman. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, really, on this podcast, I mean, this is all raw. I was in the hospital all day watching my Facebook kind of set on fire, and I got on today and I say, hey man, we're doing it. And you knew exactly what I'm talking about. I'm like, we're doing it, man. We're jumping right in. So, I don't
know, man. It's insane. It's insane. I would not want to be a black man in America today. I really wouldn't. Interestingly enough, there is there's a show that Jamie and I watch. It's actually really funny. Though it's probably inappropriate, everybody, so please don't go out and rent it. It's called Brain Dead. You ever heard of it? Did I tell you about it?
No.
Well, bottom line is one of the main characters is black, and one of them a black man, and the other one's a black woman. And they're getting pulled over by the cops, and you should see the dialogue between them. And she's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I know how to be a black man pulled over by the cops," right? Because he's just like, "I've been through this before. I know what to do." And they're trying to make light of it, but I'm sitting there watching that going, yeah, but this is exactly what goes through every black man's head when they're getting pulled over. Dude,
holy cow.
Your conductors are hating you today. They're like,
they really are.
What the heck? Oh my gosh. But anyway, and I saw another video too, and this was I'm sure you've seen it as well. This is the one where the black guy runs several stop signs. The cops are chasing him. He races to his house. He goes in his house. The cops go in after him to get him. They tase him, and then they pepper spray his 84-year-old mother. Have you seen that one?
Yes.
Pepper spraying an 84-year-old woman. And of course, everyone goes, "Oh, they edited the video. There's 40 seconds in between when they ask her to do something and she does it." Look at it from her point of view. She's at home. You broke into her house.
Yep.
And you want her to just submit because you've got a badge on? There are literally documented cases of cops serving search warrants on the wrong house, killing their dogs, killing, I don't know if anybody's been shot personal or the person's been shot. But they broke into your house. Now they have automatic immunity as being a servant. I don't know if they're considered a servant of the court at that point, but they've got immunity from making quote unquote mistakes. But think about it from their point of view. Someone comes bursting into your house. I don't care what they got on them, a badge or what. Dude, those are fighting words. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. And so here's where we're at. The latest thing on my Facebook was somebody, I just said, hey, agree or disagree with this statement. I mean, we went everywhere from I didn't mention women to, I finally said my post, agree or disagree with this statement. And the last statement before I just simply wrote amazing was, by agreeing, am I saying it's okay for them to murder other ethnicities? Like I honestly just can't get the resistance to acknowledge that it's wrong for someone to do this. And if you're upset that the discussion is about Black America, why are you upset by that? Right? Are you feeling that you're being personally accused of racism because you're a white person? I don't see that happening. What I see happening is the Black community is saying, hey, we're not being treated equally. And if that's hard for you to hear, just be glad you weren't around during the 60s in America, because you probably would have felt the same then too. And if that statement offends you, I'm sorry. Because right now, what I think is really happening, guys, is kind of like what you hinted at earlier, Pete, is that we are actually in a time period where we thought that we were further along than we were. I think a lot of the healing in America, quote unquote, has been surface. I believe that legislation made people behave. Now, I don't think a lot of my friends walking around are racist. They hate black people, or they are, overtly, I won't have my daughter marry a black man. I hear people say stuff like that. It's disgusting. I have a black daughter. I don't care who she marries. But here's the deal.
She's marrying Luke. We've already had that talk. I don't know which
believe
one of your
that
daughters is marrying Luke, but one of them's marrying Luke.
Hey, man, all I can say is, you will not have glow-in-the-dark grandbabies, and that'll be awesome. That'd be a good thing, because the glow-in-the-dark babies are totally boring. You need some brown-skinned babies. I'm just telling you. So here's the thing, though, right? I believe that what's happening in America is anytime healing really happens, you have to go deep. I think what's happened is we've gotten past the surface stuff. We're starting to get into the deeper issues now. And that's annoying people because they want it to just be a surface fix. They want it to just be slap a Band-Aid on slavery, slap a Band-Aid on the racism. Guys, it was only 50 years ago that the civil rights movement happened. There are people walking around today who can still remember that grandma or grandpa got lynched or beat to death. That's not that long ago, right? That grandma and grandpa got beaten to death for being black in the wrong part of town or doing the wrong thing. Some of the leaders of the civil rights movement who pioneered that are still alive. We're not that far away. This is during some of our listeners' lifetimes. I was born in 1973. It definitely was after my time, but it wasn't that long after my time, right? It was less than, or before my time. It was less than 10 years before my time that the civil rights movement happened. It was legislation, and you don't legislate attitudes and emotions and thoughts away. You legislate how people are forced to behave. I think what's happening is we're getting to the heart of the issue here. And if Christians who are meant according to Scripture to lead in racial reconciliation, if we can't exhibit that publicly, I just think that we are we're having major issues.
Yeah, I think we both just saw what someone posted on your Facebook.
And it's still going.
Interestingly enough, what do you think of the whole Kilpatrick thing that's been going on?
Educate me.
He's I think I said his name
Remember,
right.
I don't have TV.
I know. I was a little bit worried about bringing it up.
Facebook is the source of all truth.
He is. He's the football player who's been kneeling during the national anthem. Says he won't stand for the national anthem.
I missed that whole thing. Explain that to me.
Well, I mean, he was just his. Let me be frank here. Not a sports guy. Don't know anything about him. Apparently, he's about ready to get cut anyway. So he's like kneeling during the national anthem, and of course, that offends everyone, right? Because you're supposed to stand during the national anthem and show respect. And he's like, hey, until America gets its act together, I'm kneeling during the national anthem. So then it's spurring. Now more black people are kneeling, and now we've got whole teams, black and white, kneeling, and blah, 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 all this stuff. And so that has just created all kinds of drama in the social media world. And I honestly didn't have an opinion on it one way or the other. I think... One, I didn't know if that was his real reason for doing it, or if it's like, look, I'm about ready to lose my job because I'm not a good football player. So let me see if I can get a little bit of a notoriety somewhere so I can maybe get picked up by another team. I had no idea, right? I don't follow sports. I don't know the dude at all. But interestingly enough, I thought the best commentary on this was ironically by a guy who I do not respect at all, Jesse Ventura.
Yeah. I know.
Like, I don't even...
you're in bad territory where you're agreeing with Jesse Ventura.
But to be frank, he had the best commentary on it. Because the thing about, for those of you who don't know about Jesse Ventura, more than just, the ex-governor...
Jesse the Body Ventura.
Yeah. Besides being a wrestler, besides being in the movie Predator, besides... being an ex-governor of it was Minnesota, right? Wasn't that where he was a governor of? Michigan, one of those. It was one of those M states. And but he was also a Navy SEAL and served in the military. So he went
I
off.
always forget that about him.
You do forget that. I mean, that wasn't like just serving in the military. He was a Navy SEAL, right? I mean, he was special forces. And one of the things that his point was, he goes, look, I'm not going to say whether I agree with him or not. That's not the point. He goes, but you can't legislate patriotism. He goes, you know who tried that? Hitler. He brings up all these correlations between you have to be patriotic and that being forced on someone. He goes, patriotism is earned. You can't demand it. You have to earn it. And obviously he doesn't feel like the country's earned it. And I got to be honest with you, that put everything into perspective for me. And I was like, you know what? He's right. I mean, I didn't really have an opinion on it before, but patriotism is something that has to be earned. You can't force it on someone. It's almost like forcing Christianity on someone. You have to do, I mean, that doesn't work, right? It's got to be something that's coming from within them. And so if he's got an issue with the country and wants to kneel during the national anthem, dude, whatever. I mean, that's his deal.
Yeah, I find it interesting that maybe it's just that, okay, now I'm clearly annoyed and angry by this, but I think I'm more annoyed and angry about the anger that I see coming off of white people when the Black Lives Matter campaign says, hey, support us, acknowledge there's some injustice here. That's really what they're asking for. I find it amazing that we fight about everything rather than just saying, yes, there's an issue. Let's talk about it. Let's get into it. I kind of see it as like America's addiction, America's pastime, favorite pastime is to be angry about stuff, to fight about just about everything. The last time that I can remember Britain being angry, and I lived there 12 years, and I mean really angry, was the Brexit. That's where they fought. It got nasty in Britain over the Brexit, but you live in other parts of the world, and they're not always angry at each other. Their Facebook pages aren't always on fire like this.
And doesn't a Brexit just sound like a breakfast meal at like McDonald's that I really want to go get right about now?
It sounds like a British breakfast cereal.
I would like a Brexit, please.
Brexit Crunch.
A Brexit with cheese?
I have a McBrexit.
It's so what it sounds like to me.
Ooh, supersize it. I have a supersized Brexit meal. We think we're funny.
We do.
It's times like this I wish I were a religious man.
It's all over, people. We don't have a prayer.
And that, of course,
guys,
was the Reverend in the background.
Here's your assignment today. I know we've said a lot of provocative things, and you're probably as provoked listening to what I've said as you are by probably the people on my Facebook. And you know what? I knew that going into this. But sometimes you just feel like, you know what, I have to speak. I can't just not say anything on this, because when the world is leading the cause on civil rights over and above the church, hey, in the 60s, at least the black church got it right. At least the church somewhere was leading the cause for social justice, which I don't think anyone looks back on the civil rights movement today, other than if you're a part of the White Aryan Brotherhood or a neo-Nazi movement, and says, that was really a stupid thing. That shouldn't have happened. The civil rights movement was one of the best things to come out of the 20th century in America, just hands down. And it was led by one portion of the church. White people joined in, like I said, after they saw women getting beaten on live television. Once the March to Selma happened, it actually highlighted what was actually going on. These videos right now are highlighting what is actually happening in America. Okay, we're beginning to see what's actually happening. You can throw facts and figures and statistics, your false ones or your true ones. It doesn't change the fact that Black America feels it is being treated differently. And by the way, guys, statistics can't prove in any way, shape, or form that a cop is going to act differently towards a white suspect versus a black suspect in the same situation. So you cannot answer this argument with statistics, but what you can do is you can come around the black community and you can say, we hear you, we're listening, and as the church, we want to help you lead social change. I'm tired of Rage Against the Machine having all the good lines. I'm tired of other places, the church, or for those of you, the Republican, the Democrats outshining you on this, because they do. Okay? And if you think, oh, here we go again, the political machine, it's all a bunch of propaganda. You know what? It should have been ours. It should have been the church. People should not be afraid of the ACLU. People should be listening to the church going, I know if I commit social injustices, it's the church that's going to challenge me, because we're all made in God's image. And dang it, those people believe that. And they look past the color of your skin, even your sexual orientation. Guys, when we had the whole thing about discrimination against people of different sexual orientations, the church should have been leading the way on that, saying, hey, we're not for homosexual practice, but dang it, we are for equal treatment of people regardless of anything else in their life. And I know that's another bombshell, but you can be conservative theologically, and yet you can, in a democratic society, lead the way as the church to say, but you know what? We're going to pioneer AIDS research because gay people are suffering and dying from AIDS. And we're going to lead the AIDS research on that. We're going to champion.
The unfortunate part is, like, some of the things that you're saying,
they're controversial.
I remember back in the 80s, I remember Christians saying, well, that's the consequence of sin. You're now reaping what you sowed. You had homosexual sex and now you got AIDS. Well, you deserve it.
Yeah.
And that was the mindset in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that you hit on that we really need to make sure that everyone is hearing from this is, if you're planting a church and your point is to reach the lost in your community, and you've got any other nationality other than white people, you need to understand the struggles that they are facing, whether or not you agree with them, right? You could say, hey, you know what? I think this whole racism towards black guys is bunk. You could still say that. It's your choice. You can have any opinion you want, but it kind of doesn't matter, because if it's their opinion, that's the only one that does matter, right? They believe that. So if you don't, you still need to come alongside them. If you really want to reach them for Christ, you need to come alongside them and go, you know what? I understand that this is an issue that you see. How can I be a friend to you? How can I build a relationship with you? Really, you have to get away from yourself and your own opinions and just say, you know what? I need to get away from my own opinions and just, I don't know if I'm even making any sense, man.
You're making total sense, man, because really at the end of the day, it boggles the mind to me to think that somehow, and I've seen this in different walks of life, that we have placed anything above our witness for Jesus and our witness for Christ. I think because I was a missionary for so many years, I just learned to think, how does this make Jesus look? I walked across the street and got my head beat into the ground because by a prop forward rugby player, because all I could think was, in a case of road rage, hey, he's seeing me walk into this church here. Still don't know what I did to make him mad, but it's my witness for Christ I'm concerned about right now. So I'm going to go over there and tell him, hey, sorry, I'm a stupid driver. I'm an American. He still beat the crap out of me because he was, in a steroid-induced rage. But given the choice, I wouldn't get within arm's reach, but I'd still cross that street to let him know, hey, man, I wasn't trying to be a butthole or a jerk. Because like I said, I don't know if I cut him off. I don't know if I turned without signaling. To this day, I don't know what I did on the road. I was learning to drive in Britain. But witness is so important. Consider when you go back and watch the tapes. I shudder when I watch the tapes of Christians being interviewed during the civil rights movement, white Christians, because the stuff that comes out of their mouth, it's their blind spot. And guys, we have our own blind spots. History will one day look back on this and we will listen to the Black Lives Matter. We have no idea what social revolution is coming next, but I can guarantee you that these things will be recorded and they will be recounted in future, the responses and who led the social reform that needed to happen. You know, we know that in the case of Amazing Grace, the movie about William Wilberforce who abolished slavery. The church led the way reluctantly in Britain, but they led the way to that social change. And we need to be leading the change socially today. And if that's all you hear me say today, let me close with this story. That'll be enough. A few years ago in Refuge Long Beach, I began to realize, of course, part of it, again, I adopted my daughter and I started seeing things through her eyes, or at least I encountered racism different. I remember being in a pub and watching somebody say in public, like I was with my church plant. I was with the guys. We had a men's retreat. And one of the guys was getting married, and he said, "Hey, we need to go to the pub for my bachelor party. So can we do that during the retreat? We'll go to the Wales versus England rugby game in a pub." So we did, and I went there. And as we were sitting there, one of the guys yelled a racial slur at a member of the England team who scored a point. Now they were wearing kilts, and when you go into a pub, if you see guys wearing kilts, that's usually a bad sign. You don't want to mess with those guys. They're usually very drunk and very violent. And something snapped in me when he said it. I don't remember getting up. I don't remember walking over to the guy, but all I know is I walked over to him, and I remember in my mind trying to control myself. But I walk over to him, and he's with like 4 or 5 of his buddies. And you know my size, right? I'm not big. But he was sitting down, and I walk over to him, and I meant to put my hand on his shoulder. And I guess I did it kind of hard. I didn't mean to do it hard, but it was like I was controlling my anger so much that I guess I kind of like manhandled him, just kind of whacked him on the shoulder and gripped him. And I just said to him, "My daughter's black. And if I hear that again, I'm going to come back over here and we're going to have words." And he just looked at me like kind of stunned, you know, and which is unusual because I should have been on the ground. He would have kicked the crap out of me. I'm not trying to pretend to be a tough guy here.
Yeah, I can attest. You're not.
You know what? I've had enough anger in me in my past where I could hold my own. But what I can tell you is I'm a lot more realistic these days about my own abilities. And but situations like that in the past have got me into trouble. And so, you know, I went and sat back down. Meanwhile, all my guys, I mean, they were all newly saved but dangerous, but they were ready for a rumble, man. But all I can say is on the way home, we talked about it on the way back to the retreat center. And I just said, you know, I said that the thing is all it takes for this kind of evil to succeed. And this is a famous quote, is for good men to do nothing. It's all it takes for evil to succeed. For good men just to say it's too much for me to get involved. A few years ago in Refuge Long Beach, when I don't remember which kill, I don't remember if it was a Trayvon Martin case or whatever it was, but I just remember it was one of those. And Pete, you were there, and we were meeting outside on the benches at that time, and at the schoolyard. And I remember just praying into the hurt. I mean, you know, a good chunk of our congregation was African American. I was feeling their pain that day. This is not a theory. It's not a subject. It's not a topic to me. It's people. And I've lost people I love and care about due to wrongful police deaths. When you plant in the inner city, you will experience these things firsthand. And the point is that I just remember praying into the hurt. That's all I did. I didn't pray into the rightness or wrongness of it, but I prayed into the pain and the hurt and the confusion that I felt coming from my black brothers and sisters. And I have never in my life gotten a standing ovation during a prayer. But that happened that day, and it hadn't occurred to me how meaningful it was to people in my congregation under a white leadership in the inner city, how important that was to pray that prayer. And guys, I would even say to you this Sunday, if you're just able to pray into it, to maybe not toe the party line of the white middle class Republican, but maybe actually pray a prayer, a prophetic prayer, with compassion and, looking at God's heart, that racial reconciliation, every tongue, tribe, and nation, try that. See what happens this Sunday.
I dig it, man. I dig it. The other thing too about that prayer that you did back in the day, and I think it was Trayvon Martin. Some of those people lived through the civil rights movement.
Yeah,
that was that generation, because I remember some of those people. So I mean, for them, it's. I remember hearing one time this guy goes, "What do you think happened when the Iron Curtain fell? Do you think all the people who believed in communism just said, 'Oh, I guess it doesn't work'?" Because of course they still believed in it. And they just, biding their time. Well, it's kind of like the same thing with the racial issues. Do you think everyone's heart just changed because all of a sudden, everything that happened in the civil rights movement? No, it's still there. There is still deep-seated racism that needs to be dealt with. Hatred, sin. There's sin. Just bottom line there's sin that needs to be dealt with. And we need to realize that there's sin and realize that there's hurt and just share the gospel and be a comfort to our neighbor.
Yeah, man.
Be a neighbor.
Yeah. Amen, brother. That's a good word. That's a good word to end on, man. So, guys, thanks for bearing with us.
If you did.
If there's any hope for people to see this issue rationally, guys, we trust the church plant community. We trust church planting. We don't expect you can agree with us on everything, but take it as a sign of respect that we came to you with this. But as well, guys, we had to say something today, and we make no apology for that. But hey, if you agree with us, great. If you disagree with us, fine. Just don't be a bonehead on the internet about it. That's all. So today, this has been the Church Planter Podcast. And wait, commercial?
Oh,
I saved it.
You remembered. Well, hey, let me ask you a little something, Peyton. As you're at your church and you're offering people the opportunity to give out of their generosity cheerfully, do you give them an option other than PayPal?
Why, I do, Pete. In fact, I don't even need PayPal anymore. What? I use MoGive.
What?
I use MoGive. MoGiv. It is a cheap and easy online giving system, platform, whatever you call it.
Built specifically for the needs of new and growing churches.
And ungrowing ones, Pete.
Head on over to mogive.com/church and get your church signed up right now.
Well, this has been the Church Planter Podcast today, reminding you, if you want to reach the ones no one's reaching, you got to do what nobody's doing and go where nobody's going. And then do what nobody's doing.
Did you forget our own tagline?
I did.
All right, guys, we'll talk to you later. Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Church Planter Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones. We'd love to hear your comments on this episode of the Church Planter Podcast. Visit us online and let us know what you thought at churchplanterpodcast.com. If you subscribe to us via iTunes and have enjoyed the podcast, leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive in iTunes, the more iTunes will promote us to other church planners who would benefit from this show. This podcast is brought to you by the Church Planter Magazine, which is available in the iTunes newsstand or online via churchplantermagazine.com.